Back on Inside Tennessee with our talk around about this upcoming city election on Tuesday. And one thing that has really been talked about a lot is the police budget. And the reason for that is that makes up the majority of the budget in the city budget. And I can tell you that at least in the years of 2018 to 2019, 2019 to 2020, and 2020 to 21, the budget for the Knoxville Police Department has gone up each year. And I just encourage our voters to go past the pamphlets that they're getting and ensure that what they're reading is accurate. So those are the numbers that you may want to keep in mind when you think about policing. And I want you all to weigh in on this, Don. I know you've seen some of the things that have been written. What stands out to you?
Well, I think there's a lot of misinformation out there. And again, most Democrats and most of my colleagues and friends, we want to throttle the person that first coined defund the police because that's not what anybody or nearly anybody ever meant. We in Knoxville, we support KPD very strong. I know they've had a number of issues. They're trying to address those issues. But as you said, John, funding is going up. There needs to be some consideration of some restructuring and some improvements and some benefits. We're seeing that. I frankly think we need to see it at a little faster pace. But again, this is really polarized largely around Chief Eve Thomas and Mayor India Kincannon. And these candidates, the candidates that are running from the GOP perspective, are really putting out some misinformation about, you know, we're not supporting police, the police aren't doing their job, and some things that just aren't really accurate or true. So I'm troubled by that. But again, as you've said, voters, go out and do some independent research if you're concerned about these things.
One of the things, Susan, we've seen become an issue is just police recruitment. We've talked about that on this broadcast before, and that is true. The police department tells you straight up they need people to enter the department. What do you make of that conversation?
Well, there's no question about that. I think some of our surrounding cities and counties pay more than what we do in Knox County, and so they are stealing our policemen. And it's all about money. And so I don't really understand why we are not able to keep our first responders. It's not just the police department, but you know, as far as this defunding the police, I don't live in the city, so I haven't gotten any of the mailings. But nationally, there's been a lot of discussion about defunding the police on the left in Don's party. I think it's appropriate to use that to talk about it locally, even though I don't think that we have that issue here. But when you get into partisanship, which we're doing right now, I think everything's on the table. And you're seeing that with these local races. You're bringing national issues into our local races. Is it fair? Yeah, probably not. But, you know, all politics is local. And so you're seeing some of that. But yes, as far as the salaries that we should be paying our officers, definitely need to keep those appropriate in our city so we can keep our people.
It's not like we don't have plenty to talk about in the city of Knoxville that needs to be done or could be addressed more. We've seen a little of that. Homelessness has been one issue we've seen with a couple of the districts where they've addressed it. Violence in the city is something that we had a terrible period. First 6 months of this year were some of the worst the city has seen in a long time. You've seen some discussion about that, but then it's kind of like we got off track. We got sidetracked with non-issues or misinformation.
Don, Susan, what do you think of that idea?
Well, I think John's right. We have gotten sidetracked, and I'm going to push back on Susan. There are just very few voices on the left that are saying, quote, defund the police. There are a couple of cities that have talked about it, but really what it is thinking about new ways to police and restructuring and community involvement and use of, for example, social workers and psychological services, things that have been talked about for a long time. But in light of the national and local violence, we would be remiss if we didn't revisit how are we policing and how are we budgeting for that. And I think Knoxville is really trying to be a good example of having a strong and a viable police presence that's effective in the community in all ways. We don't want an armed occupier for a police force. We want people to serve and protect, and there's a big difference, and I think we're focusing on that.
We're going to take another quick break on Inside Tennessee. Again, I told our viewers we talk about money and knocking on doors. We'll do that right after this.